and welcome to episode 25 of Whisky Without the Guff. I'm here with Stu. This is about, might look like a tasting, but actually it's a drinking. Where we've already done the tasting, but a while back we went off to Scotland for a wee tour, and this is a sort of practical summary of what we found when we were in Scotland. We're not going to cover every pub we went to, not going to cover every whisky we tasted, etc. But just looking at this from a perspective of if you were going there and you only had so much time and you wanted to make the best of it, you know, where should you go and what should you try? So that's what we're going to cover. In terms of, you might ask yourself, why would a group of men, besides the fact that they're men and probably numbskulls, go all the way to Scotland to taste whisky when you could go to the nearest pub and taste it? Well, it's not as daft as it sounds, because first of all, you've got infinitely more choice. It's a bit like a shoe store. If you sell shoes, the thing you get the most inventory of is the stuff in the middle, the stuff that the mass of humanity either has a physical size for or prefers. So if you actually go to where things are made, you get everything that's made there. I mean, they may or may not send it to the United States, which is where we currently live. The other thing is, even if you could get a bottle, I mean, some people say, oh, I could get it through, you know, the Whisky Exchange or this, that, and the next thing. Yeah, but then you got to buy a whole bottle. And you might not even like it when you get it, so it's a good thing. So who went? Well, Stu, myself, Mike, Martin and Craig. And we'll put pictures of them up on the thing. So it's not a trip report, it's like a practical user's guide. Now, it's not even all whisky. I mean, that would take you quite a while. It'd be a hell of a way to die, really. But we went to Glasgow, Edinburgh and Islay, the island of Islay. And so we're going to talk about those places. So obviously we didn't even go near Speyside or up to Orkney for some Highland Park, say. So there's a lot we didn't cover, but you can also get those whiskies in Glasgow and Edinburgh. It's worth going to the distillery though, because as Stu points out, in Islay they have a festival every year, and most of these guys are making a particular brand, a particular scotch.
An expression
They call it, yeah, just for that thing. And if you're interested in that, we think around June, but a word of caution. So from a practical advice point of view, we happened to luck out in that we were there
late October.
So it was kind of like a little hiatus in the COVID world, where COVID was sort of lessening up. This is the first variant anyway, or the third variant or something. It wasn't Omicron yet. And also it was cold, so I guess tourist season wasn't there. But still, we had trouble getting a hotel. So if you're interested in going to Islay, step number one would be find yourself a hotel when you want to go, book it, book your flights. And the third thing would be these tastings. You don't just wander into the distillery and go, hey, I'm here. You know, you gotta book that in advance too. So without further ado, let's talk about Islay. So we flew down there only for 2 days. We had arranged some transportation and tasting, and we got picked up at the airport and went immediately to the Lagavulin distillery. Now we were in quite a few, the majority of the distilleries in Islay, but I wouldn't go back to all of them. Not because there's anything wrong with them particularly, but some are I think, better value for money than others. So in that vein, unless you...
And we didn't take distillery tours per se, going on the premise that you've seen one, you've seen them all to a certain extent. I mean, the process is the same. It's the technique that varies. So we basically went from distillery tasting room to tasting room to tasting room, and it was in that vein, I would highly recommend doing what we did and hiring a van to take you around. I don't know what, I think a rental car would probably end up costing you more if you could get one. And the people who run these tours in the van know what they're doing, know where you want to go and how to get there and when you have to arrive. So it's really, really good value.
Well, also, if you've got a rental car, somebody's got to drive it.
Somebody has to drive it. Yeah, I was skating around that point, but yeah.
So anyway, if I was to go back there, the two distilleries I would definitely go to are Ardbeg and Bunnahabhain. Why? Well, the Ardbeg to me was the best choice. We had a choice of, I think, not a choice, I mean we were given them, I think 6 different whiskies. And if you look at them, they were all things like you'd want to drink. Now, Stu and I are both big Ardbeg fans, but I got to taste things, some of which I'd never tasted before. For example, Traig Ban, which is the 19-year-old. Perpetuum, never tried that before.
Supernova.
Supernova. Dark Cove, never tried Dark Cove either. I think we also got Drum. I'm not sure about that, but I have tasted Drum before. But Drum, by the way, and Dark Cove and Supernova, at least, are whiskies that were brewed, particularly, you know these things that Ardbeg do, the committee release. Well, that committee release is, I think, what they use for this whiskey festival that takes place in June, where all the distilleries have a day. So you go to each distillery and you sample their product, and sometimes, some of them at least, if not all of them, make something specifically for that year. And so we get Scotch as well, which at the time was fairly new. And Scotch, I think, was also one of those specialty committee releases. So, and the guy who was teaching this or taking the tasting was, I mean, he really knew what he was doing, and he knew his whiskey. And that's the other thing that I noticed in Ireland. All these guys, they also know everybody else's whiskey.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's not just their own.
No.
So that was a good one. And then in Bunnahabhain, why would I go to Bunnahabhain? Well, a couple of reasons. One, it's the most picturesque distillery.
Yeah.
It's up in the northeast, and you get a great view. The day we were there, it was freezing cold, but it was dry and clear for the most part, and you get a great view out over Jura.
Yep.
It was just beautiful. And they've got these big, huge deck chairs, I guess, objects d'art or something. I don't quite know what they're doing. And nobody sits in them, they're huge. And the place is deserted. But where we did the tasting there was worth doing. It was in, I think, warehouse number 9.
Yep, that's right.
So you go into this warehouse and it's
one of the original buildings. It's been around.
And it's full of bottles, and you know, some of them showing signs of about to explode and all this kind of stuff that they're watching carefully. And then you're sitting in these old pews, like these old church pews, and it's very dark. It's a swinging light bulb. Maybe I'm overdoing it, but that's the impression you get.
Yeah.
And we were drinking cask strength whiskies. The guy was taking this out of a bottle, and I may have this wrong, but we had 3 that I really liked. One was an Oloroso cask, another was a Manzanilla cask. I'm not sure if that's the name of the scotch or the name of the cask, or if I've even got it right. And the other one was a Pedro Jimenez cask. This particular thing is the Manzanilla, and it's a very unusual smell. It's you can tell it's whiskey, but it's got some kind of, I don't know how to describe it, but it's quite unique, and it's a delicious whiskey. So I think that was a real worthwhile thing.
Oh, you can tell it's cask strength, can't you?
Oh yeah, that's the other part of this. All these things were cask strength, so they're.
It's got a magnificent aftertaste of the sherry. I mean, don't taste the sherry in from the cask in the initial.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, but it sort of reveals itself afterwards. It's amazing stuff. And if I recall correctly, our tasting conductor mentioned that most of the sherry that's made these days from Portugal and Spain is made at the behest of the Scotch distilleries, because there isn't that much of a market for sherry anymore. Nobody likes sweet wine like that. So the only reason they're making it is so that the Scotch distillers can get the barrels. It's an interesting turning the business upside down.
That's another thing I wanted to mention is attitude. The Scots, one thing you should know if you're going there from pretty much anywhere, but especially America. In America here, we've got a lot of weird states with weird rules. Like, I remember once asking for a flight in Utah. I guess I should have been pleased that they would sell me anything, any form of alcohol, never mind a flight. Anyway, the guy shows up with a flight board with only 2 whiskies. So I said to him, well, where's the other 2? And he said, well, I'll get you those when you've finished those. And I thought, why? The whole point of this is to be able to taste them, compare. He said, oh yeah, but in Utah we got a law that you can't have any more than 2 drinks at a time. Well, the Scots don't care about stuff like that. In fact, the guy in the Bunnahabhain distillery, first of all, you go in, you sit there, and he gives you a set of glass that you can take away. And meanwhile, he's fishing in these barrels, getting, this big sort of test tube thing, giant test tube, full of cask strength whiskey, and he's talking about it. Then he comes up and he pours it. Well, he's not pouring. The Scots don't pour these little tasters. You got a whiskey. And then when he's finished, he's coming up with the next one. And people aren't finished. And he's actually extorting people to drink quicker, drink more. You guys are not drinking fast enough. It's like the Scots are quite different with stuff like that. And the only drink problem they have is there's not enough of it. So we saw signs of that everywhere. I'll tell you about that in Glasgow when we got back there. But the other thing that's curious about the distilleries is that nowadays the shops, they've gone well beyond whiskey. They're selling like different tartans. They're selling purses, jackets, almost like sports car racing gear. Gloves, hats,
everything. Yes.
I guess they can make money at. So very interesting. Did you want to say anything else about Islay?
Yeah, I would add another distillery to your 2. I mean, although I like Bunnahabhain is worth going to, even if you never went inside. I mean, it's just like right out of the past. It's all the original buildings. They're all whitewashed stone, and it's a remarkable location, right on the water, out in the middle of nowhere. But I would add the Laphroaig distillery, which is where this came from. They didn't have an organized tasting for us to participate in, like some of the others did, like Ardbeg or Lagavulin, for example.
That doesn't mean they don't have one.
They had a beautiful tasting room. They just weren't running conducted tastings at the time. And the way they were doing it was you'd wander around in the shop, and you'd see a whiskey that looks attractive, like this one, and they'd answer any questions about it, and then they'd say, "Oh, would you like to try some?" And they usher you into this lovely tasting room. There's a picture of it, and that's where I tried this, and I liked it so much, as they say, I took a bottle home with me. And it's worth looking at the stuff on the back here, because it describes what they do for the festival in the spring. This is the sort of thing that comes out, and it's every year they and in their words, craft a limited edition malt to celebrate the Friends of Laphroaig. And this one is what they call a triple maturation whiskey. So 3 stages of maturation. The first was in American oak, ex-bourbon barrels, the kind of thing that most Scotch whiskey gets stored in. And then the second is American oak quarter casks, and then finished in European oak hogsheads that originally had Pedro Jimenez sherry in them. And so it becomes an incredibly complex, as they put it, expression of the character of their whiskey. And it is, it's remarkable stuff. And it is bottled at cask strength as well. But it was only made, that would have been last year's, and that's the only time it will have been made exactly like that.
So there's a reason for going to Scotland. Because
absolutely.
You couldn't buy that here if
No.
your life depended on it.
No.
And the one I liked, one of them, I regret not buying a bottle of this, was this Manzanilla.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a cask strength thing that we got at the distillery. And that's about the only place. I mean, even if you were in the best whiskey place in Glasgow, they're not necessarily going to have some of this either.
The other thing I noticed, sorry to interrupt, but it was also at Bunnahabhain in there. I'll call it a gift shop, but they had rack upon rack of small bottles, about so big and about this big around, of almost all of the whiskeys that they've made in the recent past. Mm-hmm. And the reason, and you could buy them, I mean, they had them for sale and they're varying prices, but it gives you a chance to taste their top of the line whiskeys for a reasonable price. I mean,
instead of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, for a whiskey you might not like. So I thought it was extremely clever. And
are we going to taste your?
I think we should.
He has the glasses
I
over
have the
there.
glass. There's your glass.
One glass.
There you go.
There you go. Stu actually made a very smart buy here, I think, because this was a good whiskey. I happened on him. He was sitting by himself in the tasting room with this whiskey, and I said to him, "Where'd you get that?" He says, "Oh, a nice lady gave it to me." So I said, "Where is this nice lady?" And he told me, so I wandered over and said to the nice lady, "How do I lay hands on one of these?" And she said, "Oh, I'll give you one." So you just had to ask. No charge, no nothing. So I went back and joined them in the tasting room.
Quite dark too. I mean, it's
nice, strong smell.
Well, you can certainly you can tell it's Isla though, can't you?
Mm-hmm. It's also strong. This stuff. It's 58.9% alcohol by volume. So it's what 59. 118 proof, 119, something like that. Oh God, that's a fiery whiskey. He says, losing his voice.
Oh, you can taste the peach, you can taste the salt. I mean, it's
yes,
and the smell. Oh,
that's a serious whiskey.
Just as good as I remembered.
Yeah, it's very good. It's excellent.
Carefully brought this bottle back in my suitcase, wrapped in all the clothes that I didn't have time to send to the laundry. And I haven't touched it since I got back. I saved it for this moment, folks. So you're seeing our first sips of what is, I think,
and it's good that you don't
good
see the level of the bottle anymore because, you know, the night's young. By the way, flying to and from Isla, you can go there on the ferry, which takes quite a while. You can go there on the plane, but this really isn't a plane in the normal sense of things. These are very small planes. It's a bit like, what it reminds me of is I saw this video once of all these guys going to the Himalayas and land on a runway that's carved into a cliff kind of thing. Well, the runway's not like that, but oh my God.
Well, in their defense, that was the backup aircraft because the normal one, you know, was...
Of course, everybody's wearing parkas and everything, so I took a photograph from inside this, and I'll put it up on the thing. But you don't see an aisle. There was 2 seats and 1 seat, but with the size of the people and also the parkas and woolly hats and everything, it's just a sea of
Well, a small sea. There's only like 9 people there.
travelers.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, for those of you who are aircraft aficionados, it was a twin otter, and
or a twin rotor, as I call it. I don't like flying at the best of times.
there'll be a photograph of that in the video.
It looks nice from the outside.
Oh, well.
Inside, different ball game.
But it's a good point. I mean, if you're going to be booking a trip to Islay, getting there from Glasgow, which is the closest major airport, it's just this small airline, and I would imagine that they book up really quickly.
I think
in
it's
the
Logan
season.
Air.
Yes, that's correct. Logan, is it? Yeah, I think so. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sure that they book up quickly in the season, so you'd be well off booking well ahead.
So it's only a 40-minute flight, but you're looking forward to a whiskey. At least I was when you land.
You will have earned it.
Oh, by the way, the way the airplane came in anyway, it came along the southeast coast, and those 3 distilleries, Lagavulin, Lafroig and Ardbeg, or Dink Dink Dink, you could see them very clearly from the
Yeah,
plane.
didn't we see Beaumont too?
Don't know. That's kind of around the corner a wee bit, but I don't know. I was trying to just will it away. So, gonna switch now to Glasgow and Edinburgh, unless there's something else you wanna.
No, I'm just going to sit here and drink.
Okay. So, back to the attitude of people. Like, you notice this right from the get-go. Like, you get into customs and the guy says, "So you're here for 10 days?" "Yeah." "What are you here for?" "To drink whiskey, really." And the guy goes, there's a formal customs guy, he goes, "Can I come?" So, different attitude. Going in a taxi, going to the first pub of the day. Guy says, "So what are you doing today?" Because we get chatting. "And they're friendly in Glasgow." I said, "Well, we're doing a pub crawl." He goes, "That sounds like a great plan." Like, so if you drink in Scotland, especially Glasgow, far from being frowned down on, they actually revere this kind of behaviour. So, now we went to quite a few pubs in Glasgow, but what you want to do if you're there specifically to taste whiskey, you want to go to a whiskey pub. Now the first pub we went to was the Pot Still on Hope Street, which is just a couple of 100 yards from the central station. Easy walk. It's got a wee still sort of hanging board outside it. And if you look in there, the first thing you'll notice, what's a whiskey pub? Well, a whiskey pub is one that specialises in whiskey, strangely enough. And you'll notice that as soon as you go in, because there's whiskey everywhere. Like dozens and dozens, literally hundreds of bottles of whiskey.
Yep.
Now the interesting thing to know about that is that you're only seeing the front bottle. They're about 4 deep, and it's not like 4 bottles of the same thing. It's like all kinds of things, and these guys are going up and down this wall like gymnasts, reaching in the back. So we go in the Pot Still, show you the Glasgow thing again. So I said to the guy, "Oh, I saw a bottle of Octomore up there." Octomore has a very distinct shaped bottle. It's like that, and it comes sometimes a sort of orangey bottle or clear, sometimes jet black like that, and various other things. Anyway, it's very hard to find Octomore here, and I live in Las Vegas, so you'd think if you could find it, you'd find it here before you'd find it in, Utah, say, just as an example.
Not to pick on Utah, but
Not to pick on them. Anyway, I saw a bottle of Octomore up there, so I had made up my mind. We went to Glasgow before we went to Islay. I'd made up my mind I wouldn't drink any Islay whiskies before we went to Islay. But I was overcome, because it's not often you find Octomore. So I said, how many bottles of that you got? The guy says, I don't know. So he clambers up there, comes down with 8. So we looked at the different, because they're all different. They're all different. This one here is a 5-year-old, strange enough, 10.1 edition, 10.1, 107 parts per million. This was by design the peatiest whiskey in the world, although it doesn't taste that way. Although if we taste in a minute and let you know an update on that. Anyway, so I had 2 of what I thought might be the best. Now they taste, to me, they're so similar as to be indistinguishable, but brilliant. Stu, attitude again. He goes up and he says he's decided to have a flight, which is one of the things we decided before we went there. You know, it was two things we were going to try basically. One was high-end scotches that, you know, cost you thousands of dollars a bottle here, whereas you could spend maybe $40 and get a shot of this stuff and taste it at least. And the other was to taste different stuff that we haven't tasted before. So Stu goes for the flight thing, and he says to the guy, can I do a flight of like 4 different whiskies? And the guy says, no, we don't do that. And Stu says, well, it says over there on the menu that you do flights. Oh, aye, we do flights. And Stu's kind of looking at me like, oh, am I saying this wrong or what?
I was looking to my Glasgow translator for something I'm missing.
Anyway, what I was missing is it's 6 they give you. So far from this, you can only have 2 glasses in front of you at a time. Their flights are 6.
You'll see a picture of it. It's a robust flight.
And that's the second bit. They're not tiny little tasters either. These are healthy pours.
Full-size Glencairn glasses with lots of whiskey in them.
So, I mean, it's just fantastic. So, and while we're on the subject, what constitutes a good whiskey? What are we looking for in a... So, we'll show you some whiskey pubs and we'll tell you the ones to go to, in our view anyway. But what is it you're looking for in a good whiskey? So I wrote down what I think is a good whiskey. So to me, it starts with complexity. So for instance, if I take this Lafroig here, by complexity I mean complexity in terms of the smell, the nose, and also the taste. So you don't want something that's just a single note or a sort of very benign kind of whiskey. You want something that keeps, you know, you smell it. In fact, normally when we're drinking whiskey, we're sitting out the back around a fire pit, and often I think I could just sit and smell this all night.
Yeah, right.
Never mind tasting it, just smell it. It smells delicious. So that's a thing I like. Complexity. I like warmth and heat. Now, I'm a peat fan as well, by the way, but, you know, I like non-peated whiskies as well. And I like a lingering taste. I like a taste. I mean, Stu made the same comment about this Manzanilla a minute ago. You know, the sherry kicks in way at the end, you know. You finish drinking and...
No, that was the Lafroig.
Oh, that was the Lafroig, sorry. So it's that kind of thing. And the other thing I like, it might be just because I'm from Glasgow, I like high alcohol. So I definitely prefer 50% alcohol by volume, 60%, way more than a 40%. And that might just be me.
But I noticed that so many of the higher end, but more special whiskeys, if you like the Octomore, it's another 58, 59% whiskey. I mean, I think there's something to be said for the higher level of alcohol bringing out the flavor and the intensity of the whole thing. I think it adds a great deal.
Yeah, that Octomore there is 59.8%.
There you go.
So 120 proof. So that's what a whiskey pub is. That's what, I mean, it's pretty obvious when you walk in there. Now,
They all have, mind you, they all have a token cask or two of ale just
Oh,
so
yeah.
that you can have something to clean your palate with, rehydrate before your next flight.
Yeah, yeah. So in Glasgow, if I was going there, there's four. I narrowed it down to four pubs: the Pot Still, the Lismore, the Bon Accord, and the Oran Moor. So the Pot Still is right beside the central station.
Close by, yeah. Easy
Yeah.
walk.
The Bon Accord, 10-minute walk from there, up the hill and left towards what used to be Charing Cross. It's on North Street, but it's a beautiful pub. In fact, if you look in the history of which pub was voted the best whisky pub in Glasgow or Scotland or whatever, it'll oscillate between the Pot Still and the Bon Accord. Now they're different pubs. The Bon Accord
Really?
has excellent food. I know that the Pot Still will sell food, but I don't know how.
Not much. They just sell meat pies and just enough to keep you going so you can
So you can have another
scotch.
Scotch.
No.
But there's a great selection of Scotch in the Bon Accord too. And I'll flash up a couple of pictures. I've got one of Mike and Stu with Paul, the owner. I'll put that up for you. But Paul, a really good guy.
And the Pot Still had what, 550 whiskeys, something like that?
Well, that's what they say officially, but I think they've got more than 1,000 up there. But the same with the Bon Accord. They got an awful lot of whiskey. And the atmosphere, to me, the atmosphere is better in the Bon Accord. The Bon Accord is actually my favourite of the four pubs. My second favourite would be the Oran Moor. It depends what you're interested in. The Pot Still to me is the best one if you're doing a clinical sampling of different scotches, because they got damn near everything and it's sort of quiet. You can sit there and just drink.
Yeah. It's a little hole in the wall place. It's been there forever and it looks it. You know, not in a bad way, but you know, it's been used.
Bon Accord is a lovely pub. Even if you weren't there to drink whiskey, it's a right nice pub.
And a good selection of beer too.
Oh.
I can attest.
Yeah. Oran Moor is up at the top of Byers Road, Byers. Now that's up in the university area, so you get a lot of student traffic up there. But they've got quite a few scotches too. But the Oran Moor, it's a repurposed church, but a lovely pub, lovely atmosphere. They put plays on downstairs in summer, but not in the middle of summer because the artists are having their holidays or something. But that's a lovely place. It'd be a great place to go with a book, just have a quiet pint.
And they have excellent food as well.
Yeah, yeah. And the final one is the Lismore. Now the Lismore is, if you were on Byers Road at Oranmore and you just go right down the hill to Partick, it's actually on Dumbarton Road. Partick is where Billy Connolly grew up. But the Lismore is a sort of, almost a party pub. It's definitely got a different spirit because in the toilets, for instance, if you know anything about Scotland, you know we fought the English everywhere until a place called Culloden where the Scots did their usual, let me charge out of this bog up a hill with a sword and you guys fire cannons at me and somehow I'll survive. Well, that didn't work too well. Anyway, there's names of the English generals and the urinals, and it says, please show these guys the respect they deserve, i.e. by peeing in their bit of the pub. So, but the night we were there was a band playing, there was a lot of people that were dancing, singing.
And it's a small place. It's not a huge, you know, we're not talking a dance hall or anything. It's just it's a narrow narrow pub, and it's just people having a good time everywhere.
Yeah, so great pub. If anything else you want to say about any of those pubs?
No, I mean Oranmore, the part of town that Oranmore is in is as Cam mentioned it's in the University District, but there's also lots of other things to see around there. The Kelvin Grove Art Gallery and Museum is worth a trip to Glasgow all by itself, and it's within walking distance of the Oranmore.
Glasgow University.
Yeah.
Botanic Gardens. Kelvin Grove. Yeah, there's a lot up there.
Yeah.
Switching to Edinburgh. If I was a tourist and I was going to Scotland, I'd never been there, I would do a few things. First of all, I wouldn't stay in Glasgow. I actually prefer Glasgow to Edinburgh, and I think there's more stuff in Glasgow, but you have to know where to go. It's not... Glasgow, people work. In Edinburgh, they seem to work to serve tourists or to do something stuffy, like articles at law or something, you know. That.
Well, it's the seat of government, so there's politicians. What more can you say?
But it's very scenic. It's all like little spiral staircases and cobble streets and old pubs. I mean, they got some beautiful, beautiful pubs in Edinburgh, but we were there specifically to drink whiskey. So, to me, there's only 2 whiskey bars in Edinburgh that I would favour. Now, remember, that's also predicated on my view of what a pub should look like. I know amongst our group there were dissenting opinions. Mike's preferred pub wouldn't be a preference of mine because it doesn't look like a pub. It looks like a place, admittedly a great place to go and taste whiskey, but it's not a pub. It's
Too sterile.
yeah. So my favourite whiskey pub in Edinburgh is a place called the Bow Bar. And if you go in there, they've got a real nice whiskey menu. There's not a lot of fluff. I don't know
No.
they do food. There's no blaring TVs, the guys shouting "Go Bears." No, it's
No
on
such-
a lovely wee street.
None of these are sports bars. No television. Not even for football.
Yeah. Anyway, so the Bow Bar is nice. Is it worth going all the way to Edinburgh for the Bow Bar? No. I mean, think of all that drinking time you're missing. But if you go one place, if you were to go there to go to the Bow Bar to do real tasting, one place I would go, it's almost like a pilgrimage, is the Scotch Whisky Bar in the Balmoral Hotel. The Balmoral Hotel looks like a wedding cake or something. If you get off the train there, it's a big gold archaic hotel.
It's massive.
Yeah.
Absolutely massive stone building.
And they've got this wee whiskey bar in there with, again, a great selection. Now, this is not cheap.
It's not just mixed in with the regular bar at the hotel. This has got its own entryway and says on the glass Scotch Whisky Bar.
Now, the guys that work in there,
In kilts, I might add.
the guys that work in the pubs that we've given you, they know whiskey.
Oh.
So if you walk in there, like go on the pot still and say, I kind of like this, but I'm looking for something else, they'll have ideas. And it's not just like, well, this is a bourbon with this. It's, you know, they really know what they're talking about. Now, that sort of peaks in this Scotch Whisky Bar. I mean, they not only know their stuff, but they know where the distillery is. They'll say things like, have you been up there? Well, you know that wee path that goes, well, if you take a right just at the first gate you come to, go down by the side of the river, blah, blah. I mean,
they don't just know of them, they've been there.
Yeah, been there, done that kind of thing. Speaking of which, let's try this. Have you got another couple of glasses? So, you know, Stu discovered this Lafroig thing. Mike discovered this, Craigalachy. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, a 23. They do I think a 19 and a 16 that are good as well, but this stuff is very good. Like, I mean, there's none of them terrible.
Now the Balmore Whiskey Bar is a great place to go to sample expensive whiskeys because you can get just a glass and it's you know, it's not inexpensive, but for a glass, but on the other hand, it is affordable. And if you wanted to try out that favorite 25-year-old or 30-year-old or whatever, that's the place to go.
And it's a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah.
I mean, guys have been known to spend thousands and thousands of pounds in there of a single evening, because some of this stuff, as Stu said, is not cheap, but it's good. So this is also a good whiskey. This one, from a smell point of view, smells old. This smells like what you would imagine whiskey is. If you're not really a whiskey drinker, it does have a distinct. I mean, even on the bottle, the buggers say they're doing something because it adds sulphury smell. Well, sulphur's what they're using, stink bombs and everything. I think it kills you. But anyway, this is a manly kind of whiskey, this stuff. So is the Lafroig. But the Lafroig can at least blame peat. This peaty here, but it's not primarily a peaty whiskey. Anyway, Mike discovered and championed this. I think he did found it someplace and then had a few of them. That one's only 46% though, but it's a good whiskey. I'm saying that as if some of them are inferior. None of these are inferior.
They're not, they're just different.
So if I went to Edinburgh, the other thing you got to watch in Edinburgh, the pubs open at weird times, like 4 o'clock in the afternoon. There's other places that you could go and taste whiskey, but my favourite would be the Bow Bar. As a specialty, almost like an icon, almost like a pilgrimage visit.
Yeah, right.
The Scotch Whisky Bar.
Yeah, it's sort of like going to the Vatican, you know, when you're in Rome.
So let me switch finally to some conclusions about this. So, if you go to Scotland to taste whiskey, you don't have to go outside Glasgow. And we've given you 4 bars that you can go to. They're just chock-a-block full of whiskey. And it's down to your personal taste. You go to Edinburgh, there's some lovely pubs there, but I wouldn't go to a lot of them for whiskey. I would go to the Bow Bar, and you'll find just about everything you'd want there. Nice quiet bar. And, you know, for a special occasion or something, I want to taste this stuff I know is hellishly expensive, go up to the Balmore Hotel, try the Scotch Whisky Bar. But in conclusion, we went there. I was hoping to do 2 things. One was to discover some Nirvana whiskey, like, oh, this is the best whiskey in the world. Well, first of all, I convinced myself that such a thing doesn't exist. Rather, there's a bunch of extremely good whiskies. I mean, there's some stuff that on a particular day, oh, I love this. The next night, oh, I prefer this to that. Or I think it's got to do with just the ambience or whatever. I think also, to a large extent, it's a waste of money. I mean, whiskey is not cheap. Even the cheap stuff is not cheap. Spending $50 or something or more on a dram. I mean, yeah, it'll be good. It's not like it won't be good. But the return on investment, I mean, it's like that elliptical curve again. It gets asymptotic. You know, the fact that a thing is 20 years versus 40 years old, yeah, the 40 statistically will be better than the 20, but since it's rarer, it'll be way to hell and gone much more incrementally, not incrementally expensive, but like quantum leaps expensive. My conclusion is that, you know, find some whiskey that you like and go for a 15, 17-year-old, 18-year-old. I don't think you even got to go to 20 years old. Now, that said, I like this Octomore. It's only 5 years old. Now they've got 10-year-old versions, but that's still not very old. So these are generalizations rather than absolute rules. But you can get a great deal of pleasure out of a 15 to 17-year-old whiskey. Like, and there is a difference. If you look at a Macallan, for example, because a lot of people have tasted Macallan. Go to 12-year-old. 12-year-old's good. You go to 15, it's almost sublime. It's a radical difference. Same thing with Glendronach. Go to a 12-year-old, it's good. 15, outstanding. You know, so I think you're in a sweet spot there in terms of return on investment and everything. And I would also, if I went there, I'd go to Glasgow for other reasons, because a lot of reasons people go to the pub, it's good conversation, a laugh. And you get that much more in Glasgow than you do in Edinburgh. The Edinburgh people, you know, again, it's a generalisation, but the Edinburgh people are a little more standoffish and less full of humour. And the Glasgow guys don't mind taking the mickey out of themselves, I think. So it's, that's not just because I'm from Glasgow. I swear to God, it's like that. So, yeah, now you want to add, Stu?
No, I think, well, the thing about the Glasgow pubs have lots and lots of regulars, lots of locals, and the odd intruder, you know, like we were, the odd tourist, but not too many. I mean, with the exception of the Pot Still, which has managed to get its name on everybody's let's go there from the hotel as soon as we get into town list. But especially places like the Lismore. I mean, it's just like you feel like you're just part of the community being there. That's
yeah.
If you
were by yourself and you wanted to go,
that's a place I'd go by myself.
Yeah, I'd feel the same. I'd go to all of them by myself.
Well, yeah, but
that might be just me. The Bon Accord is another sort of hospitable place too.
Yeah, very.
So
yeah, and everybody will talk to you. I mean, if you're there by yourself and you're up at the bar, you'll not be lonely.
Anyway, that's it. Get out and drink. As we do, as we're staying in and drinking. We do both. It was lovely talking to you, and hopefully you found some of this useful. If nothing else, it will save you stumbling into otherwise just great pubs that don't have a big selection of Scotch. They'll all have a better selection than you get in most of the pubs here, but they're not whiskey pubs, and you'll see what I mean if you ever visit one. So thank you very much indeed. Bye.